Automaking in Kenosha dates back to 1902. Now that's actually measured from the date when Thomas Buckland Jeffrey sold his first automobile, first Kenosha-built automobile. $750 is all it cost back then. But Jeffrey's connection with automobiles goes back really a little further. Born in England, he came to the United States in the 1800s. He began making bicycles, which he called Ramblers, in Chicago. Well, about that time, the late 19th century, a monopoly was beginning to form in the bicycle industry, the American Bicycle Company, which went around the country and began buying up or forcing out of business many of the small bicycle manufacturers. Jeffrey saw the handwriting on the wall. He realized that he couldn't function as a bicycle manufacturer for very long, so he too sold out.
In the history of the Rambler, there's two bike companies. There would be the Sterling Bicycle Company and the Rambler Bicycle Company. There was never a Rambler bicycle built in Kenosha. The bicycle that was built was a Sterling Bicycle Company, which arrived in Kenosha in the mid-late 1800s. In the late 1890s, they apparently went bankrupt. So here's an brand new empty building that was used to make bicycles. Because at that time, that was a very favorite mode of transportation. Meanwhile, Mr. Jeffrey had been building bicycles in Chicago. His bicycle was called the Rambler. And one day in the middle of the 1890s, his son, I didn't read this somewhere, when car people get together, they start talking and each one contributes something. Well, the story that I get, and I can document the race, was that the publisher of a Chicago paper had been out to one of the coasts and had seen all the publicity created by an automobile race. So he come back to Chicago and he called some of his friends and said, let's sponsor an automobile race here in Chicago. Horseless carriage race, it would have been called in that day, going from somewhere around downtown Chicago to Evanston. And of course, there was a lot of publicity because that was the whole idea of it. And the story goes that Mr. Jeffrey's son, Dad, there's going to be a horseless carriage race. Let's go watch it. Well, the father, he was interested because he had seen, he had heard throughout the country there were companies who had been making bicycles and now were making horseless carriages. So he did see the trend, but his son bringing it up was kind of the catalyst for let's do something about it. So they went to the race that was held in Chicago, and I guess there that kind of put them over the edge to let's go in the horseless carriage business.
In 1900, a bicycle plant in Kenosha called the Sterling Company was bought out by the Bicycle Trust, by the bicycle monopoly. And the factory became empty. Jeffrey in Chicago heard about this, came to Kenosha, bought the factory, and began to plan to sell automobiles that he would build in the factory here.
So they did make some prototypes, and they did kind of experiment with different kinds of steering and where the engine should be. Apparently father and son had a few disputes about that because one prototype shows a steering wheel, the next one shows a tiller.
He had a Model A, he had a Model B, and then he had a Model C, and it was finally ready for the market. So he took this Model C in 1902, in March of 1902, and took it to the automobile show in Chicago. And there he sold his first car. It's from that date, 1902, that we mark as the beginning of the automobile industry in Kenosha.
The reason that the car was named like the bicycle, is that the Rambler bicycle had gained such a high, and acquired such a high standard of quality that its fame was very credible. They were known for quality bicycles. And thinking was, let's name the car that, so people will make the bridge from a great bicycle to a great automobile. In their first year, they sold 1,500 of them, which apparently was a record. But the other claim to fame for Rambler is that at that point, Oldsmobile was already in production. And it was a mass-produced automobile, go down the assembly line. So Rambler became the second mass-produced car in America in 1902, before Ford. Unfortunately, Mr. Jeffrey died of a heart attack around 1910 or 11.
In the early teens, about 1914, I believe it was, to honor his father's name, Charles Jeffrey changed the name of the automobile from the Rambler to the Jeffrey. The Jeffreys were made for several years.
Charles apparently took a trip to Europe, and was aboard the Lusitania, and it got hit, and he decided, life's too short. I want to go out and do something else.
The company was purchased. The company was purchased by the president of General Motors in Detroit, Charles Nash.
So he decided this was the time to build a car with his name on it. And what do you know? Here's Charlie Jeffrey wanting to get out of the business.
So he came to Kenosha, he purchased the Jeffrey Company, changed the name to Nash. He designed solid cars for Middle America. And Nash cars were produced for nearly a half century after that. In the 1920s, Nash began designing his own automobile with the Nash nameplate on it, and the company grew. There were, about the time of World War I, perhaps as many as 200 different nameplates in the auto industry in the United States. When the Depression hit in 1929, many went out of business. But not so Nash. Nash had some success because he was a tight-fisted businessman. And as a result, he managed to survive the Depression years and come out the other side of that bad time with a car company that was going to be and was one of the survivors. The 30s were marked by labor strife in the automobile industry in Kenosha. Charlie Nash vowed that he would not have a union in his factory, and times were tough for auto workers. It was hard to get a job. It was hard to keep a job at the auto plant. Much of the time, an auto worker simply sat around when the assembly line was shut down for a lack of parts or whatever it might be, sat around and wasn't paid. And so to try to change their lot, they organized, they formed a union, which became ultimately United Auto Workers Local 72. Initially, Nash would have none of this. He said to some of the union organizers, before I'll accept a union in this plant, I'll take these keys and throw them in Lake Michigan. And they said, go ahead, we can't live on the wages we're being paid here. Well, ultimately, the labor management problems were resolved, not before several lengthy strikes, including the first strike in the automobile industry. And that meant for some difficult times in the 1930s, and both for the company and for the workers. But ultimately it was resolved, And as the Depression was ending around 1940, Nash had a brand new car out, an economical car called the Nash 600. The 600 in the name of the automobile was meant to signify that you could go 600 miles on a fill-up of gas, which was a pretty economical car for the time. So things were looking up for the Nash company as the 1940s began. And then, of course, came December 7th, 1941.
In 1942, of course, Roosevelt had commissioned whoever his cabinet member was, that every factory was going to go into world production. So the last car was built in 1942. In January of 1942, the Nash was built. So therefore, in the 1942 Nashes, they only built 5,428. But by 1943, they had already made their 100,000th propeller. Largest amount in the world. Nash made more propellers at that time than anybody else in the world. And of course, they also made airplane engines. In 1945, the plant went civilian, and by October of that year, the first car came out already. So the first 46 Nash came off the line in October of 1945. Some of the other early innovations, at one time, if they had a flat tire, some of the other cars, you'd have to disassemble the wheel and take off the tire. By the middle of 1905, they already had figured out a way where you could carry a spare wheel that would match the other four. The weatherized system, previous to that, the heater in a car just recirculated the air inside of a car. It got heated by a little radiator with coolant going through it, but in about 1938, Nash created the weather eye, a system by which fresh air was brought into the car, then warmed through a radiator, and then forwarded into the car. And the air in the car was continually circulated. Came in fresh, got heated, circulated through the car, and then only escaped through the windows and so on. But it was kind of neat to go downtown and see the people drive by in their Nash in the wintertime, and the windows wouldn't be steamed up because there was air circulating throughout the car. When we go out in our cars today in the wintertime, no matter what we're driving, that weather eye principle is what's in the heating system of all cars today. The system of bringing in fresh air, heating it, circulating it through the car. Another innovation here was a bed. It was an option. It was a system of board and hinges and braces that would fold away inside the car. And then when they wanted to convert the back seat into a bed, this whole thing would unfold, and here you'd have what amounted to a small double bed inside of a car. But they needed a place to sleep. Well, they would take their Nash, convert it into a bed, and go to bed, not need a hotel. Another great idea, another great use for that was, I recall, the Sheriff's Department had Nashes with the bed feature. And if they got to an accident and somebody had to be taken to the hospital or the doctor right away, they'd put the bed feature down, use it as an ambulance, and away we go. They decided that perhaps it'd be neat to incorporate some renowned world designer into the design of their next car. So yeah, Pininfarina, Italian designer of exotic cars up to that point, was commissioned to design the full line beginning with 1952. But the Ambassador and the 600, and that kind, they were called the Statesman. They were designed by Pininfarina. And one of his trademarks is the hood is below the headlights. So if you look at all Pininfarina designs, I don't know if the sun is carried on, but the Nash Healeys and some of the early designs, they all had the hood below the headlights, and that's how the 52s, 3s, and 4s were designed. And that was quite a deal. And he came, he made a tour of America, wrote to the dealers saying, introducing himself. It was quite an innovative. And they were really great cars. They made great use of room. But in '49, they came out with a revolutionary product. It was the most aerodynamic car in the industry. All four wheels were covered. And they had wind tunnel tested all the major cars of that era. So in '49, they came out with this sleek, very aerodynamic, and very fuel-efficient automobile. They were very early conscious of safety of the Nash company. In 1950, for example, seat belts were an option. But let's even go back further to 1941. Nash was the first company to mass produce a unibody, where the frame was an integral part of the body. And that made the car safer. The car was surrounded by parts of a frame instead of just underneath, to the point where I think in 1950 the company sent out a bulletin saying in the 50 Ambassador there were 50 people in the car. The car was almost demolished in an accident, and none of the 11 people got hurt badly. So back then already, safety became a concern. And they had done that with the smaller line in 41 through 48. But in 49, the whole line went unibody.
A new era was born on January 14th of 1954, when the Hudson Motor Company and Nash Motors joined to form a brand new company.
And, I'm sure there's a big argument. Well, is it going to be the Nash Company or is it going to be the Hudson Company? Well, they settled that by calling it American Motors. Who can argue with that? But they still built, the car was still built as a Nash through '57. The first American Motors product were the 58s.
And something also happened in the 1950s that really changed the whole automobile industry, and that was the creation of the Rambler, the first compact car, the first small compact car. They really weren't expecting this sort of thing. Cars were bigger, and a new president for American Motors was a man called George Romney. George Romney would later go on to some political success, but prior to that, he was the head of American Motors, and he was the one who had the vision, and he was the one who railed against what he called the gas-guzzling dinosaurs, the big cars that just gobbled up the gasoline. He was the one who saw a future for American Motors in producing a economical small car, and that was the Rambler. And for a number of years, it was a very, very successful car for American Motors. After Romney left AMC, his successors found or believed that American Motors' future lay in producing a wide range of automobiles. Dealers really wanted a full line of cars, from the economical to the mid-range to the more expensive, and in a variety of sizes, from small to compact cars to the larger ones. And so they broadened the line of cars that American Motors was producing. Perhaps this was inevitable, but it also made it very difficult to compete across the entire range of automobile models with the larger and more affluent companies like General Motors and Ford, and then Chrysler. One of the more interesting people associated with the Jeffrey Company between about 1910 and 1950 was Edward Jordan, Ned Jordan. Ned would come to be recognized as an advertising genius. He realized long before anybody else in the industry that automobiles should be sold by their image, the way they make you feel. He would say things, to hell with the mechanical chatter. Who cares about what the brakes are and what the clutch is and all of this sort of thing? Nobody really cares about that. What they care is what the car makes them feel like. And so he was the first one, for example, who sold automobiles. His advertising was directed at women, at telling them that they could drive to town, they could drive to church, and they would be just as fresh and clean when they got there because they came in, not in the old buggy, but they came in this Jeffrey automobile. They would be just as clean and fresh as the women who lived in town. I mean, that's not selling the car, that's selling what it will do for you. And that is what Ned Jordan brought to the automobile industry. That sense of image, selling the sizzle, not the steak, selling the image of the automobile and what it will do for the owner. And he was really a decade ahead of anyone else. It was the 1920s before anyone else in the auto industry began trying to sell that. That, of course, is the way all automobiles are sold today. Speed, image, and all of that sort of thing. Nobody cares about the mechanical details. Ned Jordan realized that.
I came in 1938 from Italy and came straight to Kenosha, and I went to school for a little while. Then I went to vocational school, and then I went in the Army for 3 years. And when I came back in 1946, February 1st of 1946, I started working at a Calvinator at that time. It was not American Motor. It was Calvinator. And when I started working there, the work was very good for about 2 years. 1951, things started to slow down a little bit, and we would get laid off like sometime in December and don't go back to work until maybe the middle of February or the beginning of March for the new model. That went on for about three years like that, 3 or 4 years. And then about 1956, we came out of the new model, and things started picking up a little bit. And 1958, Romney came to Kenosha and gave a big speech. He called everybody out of the plant for about 2.5, 3 hours. He paid everybody while we were in a lot for a speech, and he told us that things were going to be improved, and he was going to come out with all new models, which he did. And from that time on, things worked much, much better at American Motor. I think it was 1954. I think that they changed it to American Motor. I'm pretty sure it was 54 or 55. And in fact, in 1955, we merged with Hudson. And things were pretty slow for a little bit, but then when Romney came in 1958, things got improved a little bit better. From that time on, it seemed that things went pretty fair. We came out with new models every 3 or 4 years, and it was very good work, not too bad. When I first started at American Motor, I worked in shipping and receiving, they call it. That's supply the lines with material that they needed to assemble the cars. Very good condition of work. No complaints about working at American Motor. I thought the work condition were good. The union was superb. We went to strike a few times while, when a new contract came up. the company didn't agree on certain things. But other than that, I thought it worked out pretty good. I changed jobs. I went from shipping and receiving in 60, I think it was 62, I'm pretty sure. I went into final repair where they'd repair the cars if there was anything wrong with the cars. If we had to change a fender or change a carburetor or new tailpipe or muffler or whatever repair that would have to be done, we'd repair them. And then from that job I went to it was like part of final repair, but I got my own Jeep, and I used to, if anything got broke down on the highway, because they would take cars, the inspection department would take cars and would take them on the road for road test. And if any of them would break down on the highway, they would call the repair shop, and I would have to go with the Jeep and pick them up, change a tire, or whatever was wrong with the car. I would have to either repair, otherwise I would have to get a tow truck to bring it in. And that's about all I did until I retired in 1982. So it was nothing to complain about. The pension is good. The repair shop, the insurance is good. No complaints. I'm glad that I worked there.
I was 16 years old. And at that time, having a car was just the greatest thing in the world, any kind of a car. In my generation, after the Second World War, we didn't have cars. So in 1946, I got a job at Nash's. And my first job there was unloading boxcars. So I was 16. And I worked there, I worked there till I got drafted in 1951. I went back to work there in 1953. But then I realized, I really wanted maybe something more. But working there did provide me with a car. It did give me the financial means to have that kind of social independence. If I wanted to borrow my dad's car on a Friday night, I'd have to start begging on Monday. And I have to make all kinds of promises so that on Friday I could get the car. And you want to get away from that, when you're 16, 17. So it did provide that.
Then there were some years where the sales, there was a downturn in sales. The debt became larger for American Motors. It became almost crippling. Something had to happen. And about that time, the auto industry was beginning to feel the impact of Japanese automobile makers, European automobile makers. And so the answer, or an answer, seemed for American Motors to form a partnership with one of the foreign automaking companies. In 1979, AMC and Renault struck a $250 million deal. American Motors, in effect, sold a share of its company to the French automaker. The result of this partnership meant that the French firm plowed millions, several hundred millions of dollars into the designing of new automobiles for AMC to produce. But in the end, Renault had its own financial difficulties and felt that it needed to break off this arrangement that it had. Kenosha had a long history of ups and downs. There'd be boom years, everyone would be working, the community would be affluent, and then there'd be a downturn and people were laid off and it was difficult economic times. That was sort of the pattern for years and years. But here we were toward the end of the 1980s, with again times difficult, and again there was another rescuer, like the French a few years earlier. This time it was Lee Iacocca and Chrysler who seemed to ride to the rescue of automaking in Kenosha. So in September 1986, Iacocca cut a deal with Renault to build 50,000 full-sized M-body Chryslers in Kenosha and used some 3,000 called back to work United Auto Workers employees here in Kenosha. And then in March of 1987, Chrysler announced it was buying the controlling interest. With Chrysler in charge, it looked like good times were coming again. But this community optimism in Kenosha would not last very long. Rumors began to fly, and on January 27th, 1988, rumor became reality. Chrysler announced that automobile production would shut down here by the end of the year. Automakers, auto workers, the rest of the community, the city, the county, state officials were shocked and then outraged. Workers held angry rallies. They thought they had been sold out by Iacocca and Chrysler. And much of the anger focused on Chrysler's Lee Iacocca. He was once a hero, and now he was a villain. But ultimately, Chrysler did offer some economic incentives, a trust fund, money which would go to those workers who had lost their jobs for retraining, other purposes, to help them out. And many people who did lose their jobs, they did find other employment after their automaking jobs ended, although there have been legitimate complaints that the new jobs for these people who once were well-paid auto workers, that the new jobs simply don't pay as well. But life went on. Life goes on. The plant did not completely close down, although no automobiles, there's no assembly line, no automobiles are assembled in Kenosha, built in Kenosha. There remains a Chrysler factory that produces engines now, not the entire car, but only engines. And recently, a new engine was announced for the future, so it does look as though there will be an automobile presence in Kenosha beyond this century of automotive. with the coming of George Romney to American Motors, one of the union representatives from that time noted that Romney flew in from Detroit to speak to the Kenosha auto workers. And the line stopped. The assembly line stopped. He ordered it shut down, and he called the auto workers, all of them, outside for a pep talk. Union Representative Jack Rice, 3 decades later, said, that had never taken place in my lifetime before. He said, to call the employees outside, shut down the line, just to tell them how valuable they were. So out between the factory buildings, the workers stood amazed and, probably a little awed by the big boss who'd flown in from Detroit to tell them that the corporation that they worked for needed their cooperation in building cars. Jack Rice would go on to say it worked pretty well. The Hollywood director was asked why he chose to film a few of the opening scenes for his new movie in Kenosha's American Motors plant. This was in the late 1970s. And he said, Kenosha was chosen because they were the only automobile company that let us into the factory. It was a movie that was called The Betsy, and it wasn't much of a movie, actually. So I think the American Motors executives at the time probably thought it would get them a little publicity, but it wasn't that great a movie, and so maybe they didn't quite get from it what they had hoped for.